All right. Hi, all. Thank you so much for coming today. So this is the Westminster College of the Arts um, uh, session from our Town Hall Summer Series through the Student Government Association. This is specifically an academic session. So Dean Marshall Onofrio has a long agenda today. We're going to be splitting off into breakout rooms for FPA and WCC to talk some more about specific details. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to him. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Dylan, and a thank you to Dylan, Morgan, and Kristen Wisniewski, and behind the scenes, Liz O'Hara, for all the work they did to get these things all set up. So good afternoon. I'd like to welcome all of you to this session on behalf of Westminster College of the Arts. When you see me looking up, I work on two computers, so I'm not being rude. I'm just slipping up to my notes because it keeps me moving fairly quickly. I would like to thank all of you, the students, faculty, administrators, everybody participating. This is a really good opportunity for us to exchange information and field questions and so on and so forth. So a couple of housekeeping details. Keep yourself muted at this time. At the point where you're actually going to speak, do unmute yourself. If you would be so kind, go into the rename function. This is for students mainly, but we could all do it. And if you would, provide your first and last names followed by either FPA or WCC, corresponding obviously to the unit in which your major resides. Because when we go to the breakout sessions, we're going to split by units for a short while before we come back together. So if you could just put next to your name, either FPA or WCC. I'll give you a few more suggestions on how we're going to proceed in just a moment. I'd like to thank again the leadership of SGA. As you may know, this is happening right now in all the colleges and schools of the university. I'm especially proud that at the number of WCA students represented in the elected positions of the SGA. Several of you have been elected to the exec board positions. And again, my three student co-hosts tonight are all members of elected positions in high level, including Dylan, who is president this year. In response to the pandemic, Rider University continues planning for the fall 2020 semester. First and foremost continues to be our concern for health and safety for our students, faculty, and staff. Through that lens, we're working very hard to ensure a quality educational and, in our case, artistic experience for our students. As you know, the situation evolves daily. Part of our conversation today is to ensure that you are aware of what is operational right now and to collect from you any and all questions and concerns you might have about fall classes. It is important that you ask questions, express concerns, and let us know how we can help you to deal with this seemingly ever-shifting ground. So, how will we spend the next hour and a half, or however much of it you can join us for? Following a brief recap of where we are at the moment, I will first address questions that were submitted previously. As you know, in my messaging, I encourage you to submit some questions ahead of time. I've collated those and I'll be doing those first. Next, we will provide briefly the goals and vision for WCA for this year. And from that context, we will go into breakout rooms, one for School of Fine and Performing Arts, one for Westminster Choir College. So again, make sure you have renamed yourself and all of that. For the last few minutes of our time together, somewhere in the 6:15 range, we'll return to the main room to take any remaining questions and do a quick wrap up. I thought I would start by going directly to some of the questions that have already been submitted. All questions are going to be posed anonymously, so I am not going to tell you who sent them. I've removed any identifying information or remarks from the questions. Some of you mentioned a state. I'm not going to mention that. So I've sorted them into general questions that pertain to the entire College of the Arts and those which are specific to either SFPA or WCC, and we'll address those in the breakout. So with everybody's permission, I'm going to jump right into the questions. I'm going to invite my faculty and staff colleagues to please feel free to jump in. As I'm answering a question, feel free to jump in. I may actually invite somebody to say something about it, but feel free if you think there's something that should be added. I'm more than delighted to have you do that. If questions are coming up in your minds as we're talking, feel free to use the chat function, and I will try to monitor those as we're progressing. So one of the first questions that I think is in everybody's mind, someone asked, have you picked a date by which a final decision will be made as to whether or not everything is going online? So as you can imagine, this is part of a really complicated scenario. It has everything to do with the state of New Jersey, whether we remain in phase 2 or whether the governor does move the state to phase 3. Phase 3 would allow in-person on-ground offerings, whereas phase 2 has some pretty serious restrictions. So at this time, as you're thinking about this, remember that we have to get state guidance on all of this. The President's Cabinet and the academic deans meet daily, and we are discussing the process. What are our drop dead deadlines? So a separate question that follows from this, a student asked, what if you cancel the in-person element during the 14-day quarantine? Doesn't the final decision need to be within that time range at least? We are very aware of that. We've asked that same question. So we're really struggling at this moment to set some internal deadlines, but of course we have to respond to what happens with the state. Another student asked us, again, a related question. Sorry, this is all about opening, but it's all about reopening, of course. What is our objective measure for deciding to shut everything down? That's a really complicated question. I would invite Vice President Fennerberg if she wants to weigh in here, but it has to do with a number of factors. Again, where is the state? Whether there is any great percentage of people on the Rider University campus who test positive, and so on and so forth. We are all responding regularly to protocols about what to do if somebody, in fact, is diagnosed positive. Dr. Fennerberg, anything to add?
No, I think you covered it well.
I appreciate that. Still in this idea of quarantine and opening, a student wrote, I live in a nearby state that is on the New Jersey 14-day quarantine list. Would I be allowed to commute for a very small number of classes? That's a complicated question. I don't actually know the answer because I believe that the quarantine and the 14-day piece of it was designed that we would not have people essentially commuting in and out. But I have made note of that question, and we're going to be forwarding that to the team that deals with the medical aspects of this and with the state offices of the governor and the office of the Secretary of Higher Education. They both have the authority on this one. So I've actually bolded that one so that it's a question that I can get an answer to very shortly, and I suspect it'll turn up in some messaging to be released later. A student asked, will students be allowed on campus if they are not in class? For instance, if you have classes that are 30 or more minutes apart. Yes, you will be allowed to stay on campus. I think we're creating, Dylan, help me to remember, 2 tents are just for Student Government Association for meetings and gathering spaces, but there will be other places that we will identify where you could go to do work. That could mean a practice room if you're a person studying music. It could mean a classroom where you can go and have access to Wi-Fi and do other work and so on. So yes, you will be allowed to stay on campus if you're in between classes. That will not be a problem. Related to, go ahead.
That's spot on. We're working on a lot of tents. It's definitely going to be a tent semester because we're definitely trying to utilize as many outdoor spaces as possible so that we're able to, be in closer proximity, in a safer way. And some of those are strategically going to be placed around areas that are high traffic for FPA and for WCC students.
Absolutely, thank you. Related to the idea of facilities, several students actually asked about the idea of will practice rooms be open to students? And that answer is yes. We have put into place a safety and health protocol having to do with 2 different types of wipes. Excuse me, the sort of standard wipe for furniture, and then there are special wipes that are based on isopropyl alcohol because they will not harm piano keyboards, organ keyboards, computer keyboards. So those will be available and everybody will be able to use the rooms. And within the honor system, we're going to ask you to help us keep those places safe. So any student studying music whether that's primary or secondary, whether it is applied music or a class. We, what do you call that thing? Authorize your ID card for access to any places where the actual rooms are within a card swipe access. Someone asked if it seems possible that you'll shut it down during the school year. I presume the question was meant to say, if we're not going to be able to be in person, shouldn't it just be online to begin with? Again, a fairly complicated question. In your responses to surveys that we put out to students, in conversation with your SGA leaders and so on, we've heard from a number of people who really want to be in person. In the case of the College of the Arts, so much of what we do is in performance-based activity, and a lot of people have said, I really want to be there to do that. We also recognize that the college experience, I guess I'll put it that way, is so deeply tied to being in a community of people. And so we're trying to do everything we can to preserve that as best we can. So again, we're subject to state and OSHE guidance, and this is all unfolding literally, unfortunately, daily. The question was asked, how did Ryder come to its decision? Again, I think the question was meant to say the plan that we announced to you a few weeks back, how did we get there? So again, the President's Cabinet, the academic deans, with the consultation of a whole lot of professionals, some in the healthcare industry and so on, have been meeting regularly, in most cases daily, to discuss what it means to do Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. We're trying as best we can, first and foremost, health and safety of the community. Secondly, how to preserve the educational and again, in our case, artistic experience. Thirdly, what will it take to do that? So in some cases, there are certain things we would like to be able to do, but they are financially prohibitive. So we're having to say, can we do that? How would we do that? And so on. So we have taken into account student responses to polls, student comments that we get, and so on and so forth. We will continue to do that. And again, my thank you to the SGA leaders, because they are a great conduit for us when they hear from you. So please do stay in touch with them as well as us. A number of students asked about juries. For those of you who are not involved in a performance major like musical theater or voice performance or any of the Westminster programs, juries are kind of the final exam for performance activities like voice lessons and piano lessons and so on. Those juries typically take place at the end of the semester. They're called it because there's a faculty jury of typically 2 to 3 faculty who actually view your performance and grade you and comment on the performance and make suggestions. So there are a series of questions there. I have taken the liberty of forwarding some of that to my colleague, Margaret Cusack. Ms. Cusack is the chair of the Voice and Piano Department and acting chair of the Conducting Organ and Sacred Music Department. And she has graciously agreed to kind of answer these questions about will they take place and so on and so forth. So Ms. Cusack, if you're there, I invite you to kind of come forward and enlighten us.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. This pertains to students on the Westminster campus. As you know, juries are held separately for the music theater students in the SFPA program. But on the Westminster campus, we will be hearing juries in the fall near the beginning of the semester for all music education students who are rising seniors who have to do a level 3, all voice performance majors who have to do a level 2. There may be a few others added in, but the voice faculty is meeting next week, and the top item on our agenda is the protocol for these juries, how they will be submitted, whether we'll do them live or whether we'll ask you to submit a tape with an accompaniment track. And we will get this information to your teachers as quickly as possible so that you will have time to prepare with your pianist and get this done. It's possible that they will be Zoom auditions done in real time, but just know that if you fit one of those categories, that you will have a jury this fall. All other juries will be done in December. Okay, so I hope that covers most of the questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cusack. In the meantime, I'll ask Associate Dean David Sullivan to work with Ms. Cusack and me to make sure that we circle back with Mary Ann Cook so that we could get the similar information on behalf of music theater, so we could put out one set of information for everyone. Related to all of that are a series of questions that came up about applied lessons and ensembles. The ones I'm going to answer now are kind of generic. The ones that are very specific to Westminster Choir College, I'm going to wait until our breakout, because that's who it affects. So if you don't mind, the first question was, to what capacity will we, the students, be allowed to participate in student-run groups? For instance, Deftones and other student-directed a cappella and so on. Will we be able to rehearse or hold auditions? So the answer to that is inside whatever protocols we have to put in place regarding in-person gatherings. As I think you know, in the state of New Jersey, there are very specific guidelines right now about the number of people who can be indoors in the same room. So the short answer is absolutely permitted, but within any restrictions that we must follow. So rehearsing virtually, absolutely no problem. Rehearsing in person, we're going to have to know at the time that this comes to be, is there still that restriction of fewer than 10 people or fewer than 25 people, or social distancing of a minimum of X feet per person. All of that will have to be observed by any indoor meetings. Auditions will follow any of the protocols of the group. I think all the groups that were mentioned in the questions are registered student organizations. So you have on file with the SGA a constitution, and I'm assuming those plans include how you do auditions. So again, you have permission to do that within any applicable guidelines if they are in fact in person. So you'll have to sort of keep track of that yourselves. A related question is to what capacity we'll be able to have choral rehearsals. I'm going to expand that to ensemble rehearsals, because we do have some instrumental ensembles. And the question also then went on to say, will there be performances? So each of the ensembles is developing, in most cases, has developed a plan for how they will rehearse. By and large, they are virtual rehearsals at this time. Whether we're able to regather in person remains to be seen. But right now they are all planning to have some type of virtual gathering. And within that is, will they be able to put together at the moment a virtual performance? Because at the moment, public performances are very limited in the number of people that we could have in the audience and the social distancing between people sitting in that room. So our plan right now is not to sponsor public performances until we're closer to the time when we know exactly what the state will require us to do. What is happening with voice lessons? Will they be virtual or in person? And if it's okay, I'm going to surprise Professor Cusack and put her back on the microphone. Do we have any option regarding the modality of our lessons? Again, she'll probably answer from the Westminster Choir College perspective, but we'll fold this in the future to include musical theater, because the answers we're getting are pretty much the same.
Yes, according to CDC and WHO guidelines, the virus is spread more energetically and forcefully through aerosol drops, especially if singing is involved. And so we don't feel that it is safe to have live lessons at this time. Most teachers, in fact, have elected to teach remotely. We are looking at plans for how students who will be resident on campus will take those lessons, whether it will be in practice room or in assigned studios that are unoccupied and left for that purpose, in which case they will be provided with a certain amount of equipment to allow the distance learning to take place. Of course, if you have your own laptop and your own means of communication in that respect, that would be very useful. So more to come on this, but safe to say that I think in both colleges, or in both divisions of the WCA, lessons will be remote.
Thank you, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.
Dean Onofrio, I received a similar question about practice rooms and lessons and such. The question is, are there any disinfection plans for aerosol particles in practice rooms for singers?
The good news is the new Wenger practice rooms that are about to be delivered, I think they're coming Monday actually, have a much higher air transfer rate. Those of you who know about such things, it's measured in CFM or cubic feet per minute. And the new rooms exceed the guidelines for air transfer. So that will be a piece of what you're asking about. What we're going to have to try to figure out, and this gets back to my comment about wipes. If you are standing in a practice room near or sitting at, for instance, a piano, and you are singing, there is absolutely the chance that your expiration will drop aerosol droplets onto the instrument. So it will be important that one wipes that all down when one leaves. So at the moment, that's the protocol for doing this. I'll remind everybody, I think you saw this in a previous message, but it bears repeating. Each day, custodial and facilities crews will be going through the entire campus twice each day to do a kind of pass-through cleaning, and overnight we'll be doing a disinfecting. So during the day, they'll kind of go through a little bit and do some of that cleaning. It will not be at the same level as a disinfection overnight. Hence, are relying on users of the facility to continue to use the wipes to do that. Excellent.
And if I could also just jump in, I think it bears repeating for, in this kind of section of the conversation. Could you just outline for us specifically what practice rooms across the campus are going to be online for this year?
Absolutely. What a great question. Thank you for reminding me, actually. I appreciate that, Dylan. So there will be 34 practice rooms plus 2 organ practice rooms available this fall. Those rooms will be located in several places. Most of you who are already at the Lawrenceville campus are aware that there are 7 rooms in the basement of Lake House and that there are 6 rooms in the basement of Kroner. There will be 6 more in Kroner for a total of 12. There will be 13 new rooms in the basement of Gill Chapel, and we are installing a second Wenger unit in BLC 14. Currently there's 1 there. There will now be 2 there. So those will all be operational, and there will be 2 organ practice rooms located in the music wing, as I've been calling it. We haven't actually come up with a fancy title, but the backside of Daly's, some of you have been there before to either the classroom or the piano computer lab. As you're walking into that piano computer lab, to your left, there used to be a wall. That's gone. That's now a hallway. And there are 2 more piano computer labs, the faculty organ studio, and 2 organ practice rooms being built right now. So those will be in that area. Those will all be available for student use in the fall. Excellent. This next set of questions, I'm going to give Dr. Jason Vodica a heads up. I'm going to ask him to weigh in just a second. I received a series of questions about choral hearings. Will they be in person? How will they take place? What's the updated protocol? And so on. So the question came mostly from Westminster students, but I want to make it clear to everybody on this call that the Westminster choirs have always been open to all Rider University students by audition. When we were 7 miles apart, that was very difficult. So if you wanted to be in chapel choir, just to make it up, and you got in, you still had to get back and forth to Princeton for a 1 o'clock rehearsal. That was difficult because you lost a time slot. You had to lose a class at 12:30 to get there, and you lost the 2 o'clock class getting back. That no longer applies. It's all on the same campus. So in this case, our elective choirs at the Westminster Choir College are open to all non-freshmen. Our chapel choir is open to everyone, including freshmen, by audition. Westminster Choir College students are placed into the appropriate ensemble by dint of their entrance audition, or once they're here, by dint of these choral hearings. So having laid out that sort of foundation, if you will, that this could be for all of you who like to sing, I'd like to ask Dr. Vodica to tell us a bit about the choral hearings.
Thanks, Dean Onofrio. And yes, we're very excited to be so close now and to be able to offer the Westminster choirs experience to the entire writer community. So if you're interested in singing in one of the choirs, you do need to complete a choral hearing. They will take place online during the week before classes start. After this meeting, I believe Dean Onofrio will be releasing information on how to sign up for those. You'll be assigned a time. You'll need to bring in a prepared piece of approximately 2 minutes, either with accompaniment or without. That could be a piece from the classical repertoire, that could be a popular piece, that could be musical theater. We just want to hear your best vocal abilities displayed the best that you can. You'll be asked to complete an online oral assessment where you'll spend about 20 minutes on your own listening to musical examples and identifying whether they're the same, similar, or different. And then finally, we'll ask you to do a brief sight reading exercise where we will give you a couple minutes to look the exercise through. We'll give you a starting pitch and then you're off to the races. Again, that information will be released right after this meeting. We have separate days set aside for people who are new to Westminster Choir College, people who are returning to Westminster Choir College, and people who are not part of the WCC curriculum programs. And we just have those separated so that we can keep everyone sort of straight in our own minds as we're trying to figure out which people need choir as part of their curriculum versus which people are electing to be in choral ensembles.
Thank you, Dr. Vodica. So I'll be sending that link at some point this evening. I'm going to send it to all students in the Westminster College of the Arts, and I'm going to ask that you share it with non-WCA students because you all know students out there who sing in choirs now, who want to maybe play in a pop rock ensemble, all kinds of stuff. But please share this link to the choral hearings with anybody you know that might be interested in one of these choirs. So I appreciate that. A related question had to do with readings and carols. Will it take place? We've now had a couple of meetings and I've met with the conducting organ and sacred music department faculty to discuss how we might do a virtual readings and carols. The actual date of this is past Thanksgiving. And as you know, as of Thanksgiving, we will not be in person no matter what else happens. Plus there is the issue of Princeton University Chapel has been closed until the first of the year. So we're discussing now how a virtual readings and carols might come to be. So more information about that coming. Let's see, two last quick categories that came up that I think are for everybody. Facilities is a big one. You've already asked about practice rooms and access to other places. So a kind of general summary, if you will. The entire campus is available via registration and asking through a request form, if you will, to be able to use rooms. Very similar to what's happened on both campuses in the past. So if a student-directed a cappella group needs a place to rehearse, they will go through their faculty advisor, they will submit a request for rehearsal space, and so on. So we will make that available. We'll be allowing students to be able to practice in specialized places. For instance, Gill Chapel is getting the completely refurbished and enhanced Scheide organ. That will be made available to organ students, so on and so forth. So all of that access will be continuing. A related question that someone asked, will our meeting capability be impacted by counter-pandemic measures? Can we sing in person together if we remain masked and distanced? So the answer to that is currently, again, within state requirements, fewer than a certain number of students. So I think it is still indoor meetings are fewer than 10, whatever that number comes to be at the point where you are back on campus. I believe we're going to be able to identify which rooms and how many people will be permitted to be in that room socially distanced. So we'll have protocols much closer to our opening day of August 31st. But our plan is to be able to make this available to you, again, making sure about health and safety. And then the last questions were two of them about enrollment. Somebody asked how many new students, specifically freshmen, are we expecting in the fall? So the School of Fine and Performing Arts, the last number that I looked at, I think we are still expecting roughly 80 to 85 students. There are some deposits that are being confirmed as we speak. So as you know, the typical National Signing Day was May 1st. This year, we backed that up to June 1st, and we've been according a lot of people quite a bit of flexibility since then. So while we have heard from many students, we're still waiting to hear from many. Are you in fact going to be enrolling this fall? So FPA roughly in that 80-person category. We're hoping that the 97 initially admitted and accepted and all of that are going to hold, but somewhere in that vicinity. Westminster Choir College incoming undergraduates currently sitting at 30, 28 freshmen and 2 transfer students. That number has held steady for about 4 weeks, which is a good sign because we're now in the part of the summer where we experience what we call melt. People who said yes, but then changed their mind. The Westminster Choir College graduate population has grown to 19. Many of them are in online programs, but our goal for that program, in fact, had been 20. So I'm happy we've gotten to that number. So in this particular case, we're working very hard. Second question had to do with retention. So what we're doing right now is to make sure through events like this one that we address your concerns, your questions, to make sure you are aware of all of the available resources, everything from the counseling area to your academic advisor, to your individual faculty, your department chairs, your associate deans, me, your SGA leaders. This is a very important part of that process. So we want to make sure students are aware of what we're doing, what we're trying to do continually in order to be able to make sure that we preserve health and safety, artistic educational experience. So with that, I'm going to check the chat room to see if any questions have come in for everybody. Okay, so here's one I think. I may have addressed it, but maybe not. Practice rooms and other practice spaces. Will students have 24/7 access? That answer is no, because they've never had 24/7 access except organ majors in Bristol Chapel. The rest of them have been subject to each building, and those buildings on both campuses had closing hours. Many of them were at 11 p.m. In a couple of places, it was midnight or 1 a.m. But in this case, it will be subject to the actual building access policy of the university. That said, we will do everything in our power to make sure people are able to gain access to places they need to get to in the time that they have available to do that. All right, so with that, I have finished answering all the questions that have come in that had to do with the general WCA. Everything I have left is very specific to Westminster, and I'm going to hold off on that for just a few minutes until we go to breakout. So what I'd like to talk about right now, if I might, is just to make sure what questions you have about the ECR and teaching modalities. Do you have a sense of where we are, what those modalities represent, and how to determine what your classes look like? So I guess I'm going to ask for a sort of physical, put up your hand if you would like more information right now about ECR and teaching modality. And I'm going to go ahead and scan through the 4 screens in front of me. So if you want to put up that or a virtual hand, do you need more information about how that new enhanced VCR works and how to read it? I'm seeing literally no hands. I'm going to go into participants and see. I don't see any virtual hands. So please unmute yourself and correct me if I'm not correct.
There are a few hands. You can definitely go into that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I'm glad. Younger eyes than mine. I appreciate the help. So the enhanced ACR, as you know, went live on July 15th. Since that time, we have updated it several times. When faculty change their decision, we update it every time. When something changes in perspective of, here's what we can do, sometimes a faculty member says, oh, in that case, I want to change from X to Y. We put that into the ECR. So I would encourage you to check it pretty often. Inside the ECR are a number of different symbols on the far left-hand column. That column is set up so that you can scroll over it and it will tell you exactly what's going on with that particular course. And it comes to be questions that have to do with completely remote, online, hybrid, and so on. So all of that has to do with the way that we do convey the information to you. The actual indications themselves are accompanied by a description. So for instance, light hybrid, you can expect that 6 or fewer meetings of the class will happen in person, and the rest will be in some fashion remotely delivered. All of those explanations are inside the context that if you are a student who is not physically on campus, we are working with each instructor to deal with the issues that surround remote participation. So for each of the classes, the instructors are saying, okay, if I'm teaching in person, that means every class is on ground in a classroom at an assigned time. As that part of this continues to go through, each of the folks is working through what happens to that student who is not here. So as you look at those little diagrams, they correspond to fully in person, content delivered entirely in person on campus. Another designation is online. Many of you have already taken online courses that may be asynchronous, synchronous, or a blend, fully remote synchronous, light hybrid synchronous, and so on. Synchronous means meeting at the same time. Asynchronous means not meeting at the same time. So as you read through these, I think they're pretty self-explanatory. If you want, I actually prepared a slide that I'm happy to put up as soon as I get it to this computer, and I can actually show you each of these things if you think that's necessary. But I think you guys are faster electronically than I am, and I suspect you can get through that. I'm happy to share this slide with you afterward as well, because I actually took a screenshot of each of the little symbols, so I can send that to you later. That would tell you, as you compare it to your class schedule, how is each class going to run? And every class is listed. Your lessons, your ensembles, your classroom courses, performance ensembles, all of that, it is all theirs. Okay, so somebody said they would like to see the whole thing. So I will try to work on, while we're answering other stuff, getting it to this computer, and I'll do a screen share. If not now, I'll do it when we come back after breakouts. So let me put that away for just a second. The teaching modalities choices, as I suggested a moment ago, continue to evolve. So that's something important to be kind of aware of. The last thing I wanted to share with you, and I hope that my faculty and staff colleagues will feel free to weigh in. I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes sharing with you an idea of a vision for the Westminster College of the Arts for this fall. It is actually a bit different from what we've been telling you about these last 7 to 10 months in regard to the fact we're likely not coming back together completely in person for some measure of time. So if we in fact get to phase 3, and in fact we can start offering classes in person on ground, not all of you have indicated you're coming back anyway. So within that context, I wanted to share with you that our first and foremost goal this year is to get everybody acclimated to one another. We have been 7 miles apart, and that has been a huge detriment to student and student interaction, student and faculty cross-fertilization, faculty and faculty interaction. It has really held us back. And I'm so excited by conversations we've been having this summer. I think it may have been Dr. Vodika who first coined a term in a different meeting called the 21st century artist, or artist of the 21st century. And we've been talking about that a great deal. What do each of you students, regardless of your major, what are you facing in the 21st century? And whatever we might have thought that was in February, has just changed drastically by what the pandemic has caused artists to do. And I mentioned that in my congratulatory message to the class of 2020 for both Fine and Performing Arts and Westminster Choir College back in May. It's changed drastically. We are bringing a gift to people that in some cases they never knew we had. And that's changing. What do you need to know? So I happen to be looking at Professor Will Lindsay, who runs our game and interactive media design program. Every one of you is going to need to know some of the technology he teaches. I'm thinking of Linda Lawrence Critelli from our AIM program, Arts, Entertainment Industries Management. Every one of you is going to be an entrepreneur, marketing yourself, whether that is as an actor, a director, a dramaturge, a singer, an opera conductor, a composer, a music educator. All of that got thrown out the window on March 13th when we sent you home. So we've been talking about this a great deal. Personally, I find it very exciting because in my life and in my career, it's been all over the map. All kinds of things that I've played, all kinds of events that I have produced, things that I've attended. And I think in your lifetime, partially because of technology and all of that, it's even more widespread. And we're talking now about how to get these conversations going. How do we get faculty across the entire WCA talking? How do we get students across talking? How do we get faculty and students and staff talking? And just begin thinking about this. What do you think you want? Do you think you need to go out into a career that I dare say you might be still doing your career at the turn of the 22nd century? If you are currently 20 years old, you actually could be alive. Olivia de Havilland, a very well-known actress of another time, died recently at 104. That puts you into the 22nd century. So where are we going? We want to help you. We want to work with you. We want to hear from you. So keep that in the back of your minds as these things are going. But I would invite my faculty colleagues and chairs, associate deans, anybody want to kind of throw in on that at all? Or have I said enough? No questions? If somebody wants to throw in, just go ahead and unmute yourself. If not, what is next on our agenda is the 2 breakout sessions. So using what you've put on your name indicator here, the co-hosts, and again, so much thank you, because if I had to do it, I'd probably be sending all of you to the Twilight Zone. The co-hosts are now going to move you to either the Westminster Choir College breakout room or FPA. I'm going to start with Westminster Choir College, then I'm going to slip over to FPA. In the meantime, Dean Sullivan is going to keep the FPA one going. Faculty will be there to assist him as well, and I will join you very shortly. Mickey's hands are showing it's about 5:45, and we thought we would run the breakout rooms to somewhere around 6:10, 6:15, and at some point, one of us will come back in and say, come on back to the main room. So far, so good? Hosts, you're ready to do your magic?
Yes, ready to do it. And should you be sorted into the wrong room, feel free to just leave that breakout room and I can sort you right on back into the correct one.
Excellent.
You'd be able to ask some questions. So for this part of it, it's really to answer any questions that you all have as best that we can, especially about the academic side. For questions about housing or about some of those things, that's something that I'm a little less familiar with. I know what we've all been told about some of them, and some other questions I've had to ask on behalf of students, so I might have a little bit more if those kind of questions come up too. But I invite your questions.
Could you just, oh,
Sorry, Dylan.
oh, no, jump in.
Okay. Wait, I don't know what am I. Okay. This is Sherry. I'm Abigail's mom. She's not home, so I'm doing the call for her.
Oh, yeah, hey, Sherry.
Let me just get back on my screen here. So I just want to know, I know I had asked this before. I just want to make sure that nothing has changed. For the Arts and Administration, the intro class, 121, it is still listed in the modality as fully in person, but is Todd still planning on allowing students to do it remotely if they so choose?
Yes, my understanding is that he is. He is also debating moving it to a more remote platform, because he's not, just because, again, he's trying to sort of prepare for every contingency.
Okay.
We had a brief conversation a day ago, and he's sort of trying to assess what would be the best thing to do. But regardless of whether he moves it to an all remote, he is totally fine with people taking the class remotely.
Okay.
And he will record sessions for anyone who can't be there, or people can zoom into the class. Like, he's very flexible about that.
Okay.
In fact, but what could happen is that the whole thing could end up going online. Or
Okay.
he may do a few sessions to begin with and then move online, depending upon how the situation evolves.
Okay. So even though the fact that it still says in person online on her schedule, just ignore that piece of it.
Yes, he is. His last email to me was that he was willing to accommodate anyone.
Okay.
Yeah, and Sherry, just so you know, so when faculty had said they would be in person or even heavy hybrid, we asked faculty, because we knew we'd get this question, that in the end, there may be some students who, for all their other classes, are remote, and sort of for one class, is that going to be the case? So we asked them ahead of time, are you going to be able to accommodate a student in this in-person that wants to participate remotely? And so the faculty, I have a huge spreadsheet that says yes and no for some. And there are some that just say, no, it just can't be done remotely. And therefore the student will have to take a certain type of class in person, when they can. But in this case, it's been pretty consistent for him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other question I have, and David, I know I've been going back and forth with you. Abigail's also doing the event planning minor. So looking at the course requirements for that, as well as the general core requirements, I know on her schedule right now, she has COM 105 and SOC 101. And looking at the degree works, it's pulling the COM 105 as being the one that's going to meet the requirements for her, the one class that she has to take out of the core.
Mhm.
Should she still take the SOC 101, or is it just going to end up being extra credits? Like, because I know I know you and I have gone back and forth. We're trying to find an English class that she can get into her schedule.
The Comp 120, yeah.
Mhm.
So what happens is, so the A major itself is 60 credits. The core is 33 credits, and it's going to depend. I don't know offhand. It's usually around 18 to 21 for a event planning for a minor course. So that one is not in our school, so I'm not as familiar with the requirements of that.
Online, it says 27.
Wow, 27. Okay, so we could actually look, because I'm not looking at those since it's outside of the school. We can look to see, is there one of those courses in that minor that would be something she should be taking this spring? So in the fall. So we can look at that as well.
Yeah, when I looked at the COM 105, it's weird. It has the list of requirements, and then underneath of it, it says like additional courses you could take, is kind of like the way that it's listed.
Yep. It would be an elective course in the end. And so it's going to count as credits towards the major. But as you're saying, if she's trying to do a major plus a minor that is up to 27 credits, we're going to want to hit things in the major and the minor and the core rather than jump into elective credits at this point. What we're trying to do with courses is also make sure, if you've looked at the ECR, everybody, it's pretty tight. And especially if the modality is to be remote. So some of them are over enrolled, but the dean's office that controls those courses controls whether students can be in it or not. I'm pretty confident, Sherry, that we're going to get her into a CMP 120 that's remote and that will fit her schedule. It's just at this point they're locked. They're locked them. I've made that point to the dean's office to say there is literally no remote option for an additional student for that course. So we're going to wait to see, because I bet there's going to be a little bit of melt in some of those anyway, and then we're going to snatch that up.
Okay, yeah, I keep trying to watch it and see what happens with it.
Sure.
Okay.
Quick question. Hi.
Hey, Jerome.
I know with this, everything's not like, of course, settled yet, but I know we started this semester a week early. Are we going to start spring semester a week early as well? Or
not to my knowledge. So the idea being leaving at Thanksgiving meant that folks weren't going to have to go home and then come back. And if you're noticing, right, depending on where you're going home to, if you come back and things are as they are, then there's another 14-day quarantine or something. So to sort of finish as much on campus as we can by Thanksgiving and send folks home once, that's going to allow, for one more week of remote delivery to finish the semester. My sense is just based on flu season and everything else, we don't want to try to come back earlier in the spring. My sense is we typically come back the last week of January, and that's sort of later than some other schools. And in some ways, I think as an academic calendar in this situation is a good thing, that we want to come back a little bit later so that we're not, in that midst of that other flu season that typically happens as well. So I doubt it. But I'll tell you, I haven't heard anything, but my sense is that the spring semester will keep the same.
Okay.
I might be able to add to that too. I think that there's a J term that's run in January too. So I think that slot will almost guarantee that the timescale will be as it's always been. It won't be earlier, would be my strongest bet with that situation. I hope that helps.
That's
Right. And J term is completely remote for that reason as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned finals. So regarding finals, I know this may vary from school to school, but since for me, I'm a dance major, we have to perform for our finals. Do you think we'll do that before we leave so that way we don't have to do it in our rooms on Zoom?
Question and a good consideration. I think that'll be something to talk about with your faculty member. I think especially saying as they develop their own particular course schedule, it's something to bring up as well, to just say, once you see what the schedule is, if it looks like the final is going to be and what the format of the final is going to be, if it looks like it's during that week and it's a performance final and what your situation is at home, I think it's worth sort of bringing that up to see if possibly do you do it before you go home, and then there's something else that is the final. So when the assignments are due, you might be able to switch. That sounds like a reasonable idea.
Thank you.
For anybody who wasn't in any of those meetings last week or have had conversations about it, could you talk a bit about just in general performance opportunities for the semester?
In which areas?
In all the areas.
All the areas. So, well, Vinny, the pop rock ensembles, right? So those have just been switched to remote. So those opportunities are there, right? Right. So those will be remote.
Yeah, pop rock and skills. We'd originally scheduled them for the Fine Arts Center, and they were supposed to be in person. But the latest research that suggests that any kind of sort of singing in an enclosed space is just a greater risk. So Rich has moved them remotely. And so he is working on figuring out how students can come together and still have an ensemble experience online, and then how to work with people who may not have the instruments that they need, etc. But what kind of music can they make instead, and to what degree will that be sort of digital and involved, tech? He's doing a lot of research on that. So he's got a plan, yeah.
Great. So that's pop music. And Tiffany, you may know if you've been on with Zoom with Dr. Kim, as far as what kind of dance. There's been all sorts of discussions, I know, and I don't know the final outcome. There was at one point of doing some kind of drive-in with some film dance as well for the fall. For the theater and musical theater season for the fall, I've heard productions that are being considered or that have been put forward are, one is a new musical, a workshop of a new musical called This Is Treatment, that will bring in a composer and potentially the director that she's been working with on this project to work with students in developing a new musical. There's also a new student work development project. I spoke with Robin Shane and Yoshi Tanakura today a little bit more, just for myself, to find out a bit more what they're thinking about. That'll be student written work that will also be directed by students, designed by students, and put on in some format. And they haven't figured out exactly what it'll be. Virtual in some ways, whether it's live streamed or if it's filmed. For that, they're also looking at radio plays, a couple of radio plays to be done in conjunction with communications. I've heard two titles. I'm not sure if they're set. Is it It's a Wonderful Life and the Peoria Plague? It's just ideas of a couple of different radio plays that might be done. And then the cabaret to be, hold on, I wrote it down today. Postmodern hip hop. No, postmodern.
Jukebox.
Jukebox music. That's the one that I heard. Postmodern jukebox music as a fourth piece for the fall, and that also will be done. My sense is, they're all virtual. We're not going to do any theater productions where we have an audience sitting in the Avant or the BLC with folks on stage. So they will all be streamed remotely during the semester.
I'm
So
going
with,
off.
I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
Going off of the season, how are rehearsals going to work? Are they going to be in-person rehearsals? And if so, like what cleaning measures will there be to make sure the actors and the tech team's safe during rehearsals?
Well, I think if there are going to be any rehearsals, sort of as Dean D'Onofrio was saying earlier on, it's going to have to make sure it's in a space that allows for whatever is happening, whether if it's singing, if it's dancing. Dancing needs 12 feet square around each person, and you can't intersect the squares. So you'd have to be in a big enough space to do some kind of choreography for that. For singing, right, how many students can you get in a room? As he's saying right now, under 10. And then if they're singing with mask, is that even safe to be done? It might not be possible to do that for the singing. So it's going to depend on the activity they're doing. If you're doing scene work, can you keep a 6-foot social distance masked while you're doing those rehearsals? So for example, I said to Yoshi and Robin today, my question was, well, if people are going to do this, if students are going to write their own play, one thing that might be an idea is that the writers have to come up with a situation and a scenario in which the characters need to be 6 feet apart. How do you do that? So that's just a condition of it. It doesn't have to be because we're in a COVID situation, but it can be that there are two people in a apartment building on their balconies and they're above and below, and they're more than 6 feet apart. And that just happens to be the situation. And can we then live stream that somewhere? That seems like you're 6 feet apart, above and below. So try to build it into whether they're doing some site-specific things for the pieces, or figuring that out, whether it's a film or live streamed. So that's that. It's got to be. We have to follow the guidelines. So if we're not able to keep people with a safe social distance and singing or dancing within the space, that isn't going to be an in-person thing.
Awesome, thank you.
That worked for the opening of Private Lives. So for the first 20 minutes, they're on 2 separate balconies.
Yeah, I was telling them
great dialogue.
I was telling them today of a production, the playwright that I work with and I were talking about in New York City, was that we were going to try to different forms of audience and actor and relationships. And one was we were going to give everyone, and Will, this is going to bring your into this, was creating an app in which everyone would get a phone on your iPhone, would have an app, and you'd be able to listen in on the actual scene that's going on the 3rd floor of a building through the windows. So you're watching a theatrical piece through the windows, but you're listening to what they're saying and what's going on your cell phone. And so everyone sort of, can we look at those types of live performances that are using technology, but that creates a different immersive experience besides sitting in a theater space watching something on stage. So this is really meant to expand our creativity by giving some restriction, which is often what spurs more creativity, is when you're restricted in some way.
With regards to the stagecraft class, how is that going to work with the way everything is?
My understanding is that the aspects of the stagecraft class when students are in person is going to be to be able to manipulate the machinery. And that is also going to require a social distancing. So it won't be the entire class attending, from what I'm understanding, in the shop at the same time. They're going to be spread out, and it might be in a few different areas for that. So that's the main part, is for them to be able to apply whatever they're learning. I believe the instructor is also going to be creating video tutorials of use of the equipment, but it's that aspect of actually getting hands-on. So to watch a video on working the bandsaw is one thing, and understanding how to change the blade, but to do it yourself on the machine is sort of the only way to really do it. So that's really where that aspect of being hands-on is going to be, when you're manipulating machinery and other things that you can only do in person.
Dean Sullivan, I could be wrong, but Buck was saying that stagecraft kids don't need to do shop hours this semester. That is getting rid of shop. I could be wrong, but that's what Buck said last week. so that so stagecraft won't be used in shop hours.
Not necessarily, yeah, right. So as far as the shop hours, but the actual class time when they're learning the actual pieces, but that's going to be explained by Buck in the syllabus for how he's going to accomplish it for the course. But if you guys know anything more, Nicole, you might know more about some of that stuff as well, because I know Stagecraft Practicum, he's just sent me something else about that might be able to do a little more remotely.
I believe the syllabus said he's dividing the class into thirds, and I think 1/3 will meet on Mondays, 1/3 will meet on Wednesdays, 1/3 will meet on Fridays.
Right. Right, that makes sense. So if depending on the number, he's going to keep the numbers down and spread them out throughout the shops and the theater spaces.
And the majority of the
sorry, go ahead.
The majority of the class is also in the actual Yvonne Theater, so they'll be spaced out very easily in that theater.
Okay. And then I know it's not definitive as far as how rehearsals are going to work, but, and I know I asked this in one of the other Zooms, but just trying to get clarification. Is there going to be a conflict with evening classes and any type of rehearsals or working on any of the productions, even though they're going to be remote? Is there going to be an issue with that? Should we stay away from evening classes?
I think in most semesters during Tech Week for technical theater students, that becomes a conflict. Because of the virtual nature of this, it's not necessarily going to be the same kind of conflict that you would typically have, and it would usually be during that Tech Week. It's usually not during every rehearsal unless you're the stage manager to have to be at each of the rehearsals, which were occurring at night in person in one of the spaces. So I don't think it's going to be an issue this semester. In other semesters, it could be when we're in person having nightly rehearsals.
Okay.
Are there any questions for, well, we have faculty from pop music and representing AIM and representing game and interactive media. Do we have any questions for them?
I have a quick question about AIM. Do you know if the grad program is still on track to launch despite what's going on?
I believe so. Yeah, we have our courses already in workload. We have an instructor actually to be taught for the fall, and we have a couple of enrollments as well. So yeah.
And that's a remote program as it is in terms of, so it's really running as it would anyway, yeah.
I have a quick question about Tech Week. So I know there are many students that have to get a tech credit. Like I know, like me as a musical theater major, I have to have tech credits. Are we still going to be able to do that? Will there even be Tech Weeks in kind of with this filming? I was just kind of curious. I know they're going to have the stage management team, but will you also have other students on tech credits at all this semester?
The answer is yes. So I've been told, yes. As far as it's going to depend on what technical needs these productions they're going to have. So the radio plays will have a very particular one. The others, it depends on whether things are live streamed, if they're going to be filmed in a certain way. So and that's one of the questions I've asked the design faculty is what design elements are there and what kinds of things have to happen for which students are then going to be creating and working on crews for this. My understanding is that they are, while they firm up the plans for what exactly the projects are going to be, for example, with the development of a new musical, how this is going to be done virtually, like a staged reading. It's going to be it's not like it's going to be presented on a stage, it'll be presented virtually, but how do we deal with what people are wearing, what the backdrops are there elements of projection design or other things besides physically building a set for something? But is there other stuff that can be built virtually that might be if you look at stuff like the Irish Rep is doing the Weir right now with each of their actors in a different space, but they're all in the same pub, and they've created their virtual backdrop so that you're in the same space. So that's the difference of what they're going to do is figure out what the crew would be.
Thank you.
I'm just jumping in to join. I'm willing to just sit and listen, but is there anything that's come up that I can try to help with? Looks like, as always, you guys have done a great job of helping each other.
Yeah, I think most of our questions over here have been taken care of.
Okay. Okay. The fall is going to be very interesting, obviously, because we're not able to be together in the way that I would have loved. But as we begin to become more integrated in our Westminster College of the Arts personality, I guess I'll use that word, I think this is terribly exciting. All of you are going to have opportunities to do things we've not been able to do at Lawrenceville. All of the Westminster Choir College students will have opportunity to do things they couldn't do in Princeton. And I think it's just terribly exciting. I mean, when I think about the possibility of what this means going forward, it's really quite exciting. And I think that in the future, what I hope will happen is that the amount of student-generated energy, activity, groups, whatever, is going to increase, because now the College of the Arts will become, I dare say, maybe the second largest to the College of Liberal Arts. And if we can start to get our enrollments back where they belong in both units, maybe we'll give them a run for our money. So we'll see. I don't know the enrollment in the College of Education, so we might be third. Let's see what we can do about that. But a critical mass of people, a good set of energy. Anything I can help answer? If not, in a few minutes, we're going to get called back to the main room. I've gone ahead and downloaded my little screenshot of some of these ECR things, if that'll help you.
Marshall, actually, I did have a question. We have some classes, I know sometimes typically when we have classes that are very, very low enrollment, with very low enrollments, they tend to be canceled. And I've noticed this year that has not happened with any of those classes. Is that still to come?
It is still to come.
Okay.
What we've done over the summer in conjunction with the provost, who is the vice president for academic affairs, sometimes called the chief academic officer, right. So Dr. Ferdine working with the deans, we have, what's a good word, relaxed the number that we have traditionally used as the minimum. Mm-hmm. So on the Lawrenceville campus, that minimum has been 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. And if a course had 6 or 7, we tried to run it. Sometimes we ran it as what was called a directed study, and mm-hmm. so on. But often in the 3, 4, 5 student category, we would just outright cancel the course. This time, we're dragging our heels a little bit because there are still over 200 students who have not registered for the fall yet.
Oh, wow, okay.
So we're wanting to give as much time as possible. However, because we do have a collective bargaining agreement with our faculty, we are bound to notify faculty in the not very distant future if a course will be canceled. So we'll be working on that in the coming probably week to 10 days.
Okay.
We will be running more courses with lower enrollments than ever, but we still can't afford to run a class with 2 students.
Right, okay, fair enough, thank you.
But what a great question.
I would just like to ask the students how you're feeling about all of this. Are you looking forward to coming back? And I'd be curious to know what your plans are. Are you planning to stay home and be full-time remote yourself, or are you going to come to campus? Are you going to quarantine? I know we've got some students. I see some students I recognize here that are coming from other states. If anyone wants to speak up and let us know how you're feeling about it.
Hi, I'll speak on it. I'm feeling well. Going into classes like in person to me is kind of iffy because just like, well, number one, I'm a musical theater major, so probably half the people have already been to New York recently, or like coming from New York, or they're going in for auditions or something like that. And I know that's probably not going to happen right now because of Corona, but that's just something that's always on my mind. Like, are these kids still going into the city, or like what's happening? And then dance classes are always filled with at least like 15 to 20 to 30 people in like that little humid small space. So I'm a little scared about that, even though I heard the tap class is going to be in the gym. That's going to be lit. But yeah, just coming back to class just coming back to classes in person in general, just is kind of iffy because having a bunch of 24-year-olds and under who don't really, some are taking it seriously and some aren't. It's just it's a little
So you worried for your own safety mostly.
Yes, exactly. Because I know what I'm doing, but I don't know what Sally's doing. I don't know what Javon's doing. I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you.
No.
Anyone else? Katie?
Sure, I'll speak on it. Hi, Lisa. I hope you're doing well. Long time no see. Um, I'm coming from Texas, so of course it's a little nerve-wracking, but I really miss just being on campus and having those classes in person. I know are going to be different, but I really feel like I gain a lot from an in-person experience, and so I really hope that we're able to come back. But of course, we have to be safe, and I want everyone to be safe and healthy. So it's a lot to balance, you know, it's a lot to think about.
You know, I was on the campus yesterday. I had to go to my office and get some books, and there's a lot of construction going on. They're working on the chapel. The chapel looks like it's, you know, busy, and they're doing something in our building. I'm not really sure in fine arts, but
Yeah, a lot of construction projects.
A lot of work here.
Good to
It
be
looks like the breakout room is going to close now in about 20 seconds.
Okay.
Marshall, just something to think about in the last 15 seconds. I think someone posted a question about if we move to stage 3, does that change how we deliver our classes? Is there any chance that we suddenly all come back and they don't have dorms? So something to think about for when we are in the big room.
Maybe throw it in the chat room, or just pencil it out, and as soon as I'm done, let's jump into your questions. So I'll start with Westminster Symphonic Choir. Dr. Stephen Pilkington will serve as conductor for the season. As I think most of you know, last year he was the assistant conductor to Dr. Miller. He will take over as conductor for the 2021 season. We have affirmed the value of this ensemble, especially in the face of the pandemic. It is an ensemble that sits at the core experience for all Westminster Choir College students. The concert slated for December with the Orchestra of St. Luke's has been canceled. The Philadelphia Orchestra has not yet released publicly its plans for the spring. They are going to be putting out a notice on August 17th. I have reached out to them, and I'm hoping to get some type of information ahead of that. But at this point, we do not know whether the February and March runouts are still going to happen. So that'll be part of future messaging, but it could clearly affect those performances. Dr. Pilkington is planning to employ a series of what he has called 2-week sequences that will involve lectures, some video, some visits from virtual guests, breakout sessions, and so on, allowing you to connect with each other and to connect with him and various guests. He's looking at the idea of a spring concert, hopefully back together, that might include a multimedia presentation of a work for choir and soloists. So he's been thinking about that as we talk. You're welcome to take notes, but what I'm reading from is going to be sent to you after this meeting. So don't feel like you have to scribble it all down. Westminster Chapel Choir. Dr. Jason Vodica will serve as conductor for 2020-2021. It is, as you know, required of all first-year Westminster undergraduate students. It is open to all Rider University students by audition through the fall choral hearings. Fall rehearsals will be held online and will include learning, listening to, and studying choral works, plus, again, seminars with a variety of guests who will bring a variety of perspectives. Westminster Choir. Based on pandemic-related circumstances, Westminster Choir is going to be placed on a 1-year hiatus. All Westminster Choir concerts and performances, including November 2020 at Carnegie, the January 21 tour, have been canceled. The Racket and Tennis Club annual concert and benefit has been canceled. Spoleto has moved May 20 to May 21, but they have chosen to change the program. So with all of these cancellations, the list of the choir's typical activities is quite small. I recognize, and I just saw some of your facial reactions. This is a first in the history of Westminster Choir. We take this incredibly seriously, and part of the reason that it took 12 weeks was to try to look at all possible options and devise a plan that bodes well for the future. The one-year hiatus will allow the department faculty and the deans to discuss the future of the ensemble program as well as the future of Westminster Choir College in preparation for a search to be launched this coming year for a full-time tenure track replacement for Dr. Miller to be in place for fall 2021. There was a question asked, what happens to the 100th anniversary celebration? Obviously, all of that was placed on hold when everything got canceled back in the spring. We will still celebrate that anniversary. We will be doing it at a different time. We will be doing it under different circumstances, but we will remain committed to celebrating it appropriately and hopefully as part of a plan for the future of that choir, but also of the entire ensemble program in preparation for welcoming a new conductor and the future again of the programs. I'm going to move on. I know you'll have questions and perhaps reactions. Westminster Williamson Voices. Dr. James Jordan will continue as conductor of that ensemble. He will continue his association, providing a deep continuity that is vitally important at this time. And it continues his estimable reputation with that renowned ensemble. Aurora, their recording from a year ago, has just been released. It'll be available on August 7th. We've already put into the can, so to speak, the next recording to be released in the spring. We intend and expect to continue the Westminster Williamson Voices relationship with the Choral Institute at Oxford. Westminster Williamson Voices will be open by audition to all non-freshmen. We will be creating a second section of Westminster Williamson Voices to be called Williamson Voices Treble Ensemble. Tom Shelton will serve as conductor for the coming year. The repertoire will be drawn from all historical periods and styles and will be for treble voices. It will be open by audition to all non-freshmen. Westminster Jubilee Singers will continue to be conducted by Mr. Vinroy Brown. Unfortunately, the May 2020 celebration of the ensemble's 25th anniversary fell victim to the pandemic, as with so many other events. We expect to observe this important milestone this year, and we hope to complete a recording, perhaps to be released digitally. Fall sessions will be entirely remote. Planning for the year includes the possibility of virtual concerts. It is meeting at a different time. It is Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 1. So please note that it is no longer in conflict with Canteride. Westminster Jubilee Singers is open by audition to all non-freshmen. Westminster Canteride. Dr. Jay Carter will continue as the conductor. The ensemble will be composed of 8 to 12 singers selected by audition. They will focus on works written before 1800. Fall sessions will be entirely remote, combining Zoom, virtual rehearsals, the My Choral Coach platform. Students will be recording material to be edited together for some virtual recordings. Hopefully in person, the spring will include a concert of Renaissance and Baroque music from the Cathedral in Puebla, Spain. Westminster Concert Bell Choirs. Ms. Kathleen Shaw will continue as conductor. Concert plans, as you can imagine, depend upon the possibility of in-person rehearsals. However, in gratitude to her and in deep recognition of our partnership with Malmark Bell Craftsmen, Malmark has graciously agreed to provide choir chime instruments that we will be able to send to students so that they may continue to practice their music if we cannot do in-person rehearsals. This would allow virtual rehearsals. The May 2020 national tour also fell victim to the pandemic. It has been tentatively rescheduled for May of 2021. again, assuming that touring and performances may resume. Other choral-related topics. I don't know how many of you are aware, but Mr. Alex Cantor has resigned his position to accept a position on the faculty at a university in Florida. So we are now dealing with how we will get through the fall with that and hoping to replace him for January. We are planning a virtual and readings and carols event, as you heard me say earlier. It will take a lot of people working on it, and of course a great deal of technology to make this thing work. So before taking your questions, I would invite Mr. Shelton. I think Dr. Vodika is with us. Ms. Cusack is with us. Ms. Sears is with us. We were all involved in the crafting of this plan, and I would first invite any of them who might wish to speak. If I've missed anyone from conducting organ sacred music, please accept my apology, but feel free to unmute yourself and weigh in. And then if any of the other faculty wish to weigh in, please do so.
I'd like to weigh in and just talk about how we got to this process of figuring out which ensembles to run in the fall and which one to put on hiatus. I sang in Westminster Choir for 2 years, so this came as a kick in the gut to me, really hard, even after being on the committee that went through the process. As we were looking at the number of students we have and the feasibility of running 2 SATB ensembles of about 25 to 40 people, it became really clear we just didn't have the students to make that happen right now. And when we looked at Williamson Voices or Westminster Choir, the opportunities that Williamson Voices has had will continue into the next year. Their conductor will continue on the faculty. And it just made sense to continue that ensemble and to continue Dr. Jordan's work and all of your work, those of you that have been in that ensemble. Of course, that leaves us without a Westminster Choir in its 101st year. I think for all of us, it's important to realize that our school is at a turning point right now, and that's not to be taken lightly. We need to figure out who we are as a school. We need to figure out who we are as a choral organization, and we need to figure out what this is going to look like in the future with regards to COVID-19, with regards to Black Lives Matter. This gives us a year to figure that out, and it gives us a chance to hit pause because of those just lack of performing opportunities that Westminster Choir would typically have. It's very sad. It's very hard for me to talk about this, but I think it's going to give us some space to take some serious stock and plan for the future. I also wanted to assure any of you that were in Westminster Choir in the past year, all the conversations that went on in these meetings, we were very concerned about you losing your musical home and musical ensemble. And we want you to know that all of the other audition choirs, you're going to have a place to sing. You're going to have people to make music with. And all of the conductors are very excited to welcome you into the other ensembles. So we hope that you will continue, of course, to sing in an elective choir. And please know that we did very, very heavily consider each and every one of you.
Thank you, Dr. Vodika. Anyone else from the faculty?
I just want to say I'm happy to see everybody's face. I've missed all of you. I will answer 2 questions that are in the chat. One of them was about will current Williamson Voices trebles need to audition in the fall for the treble section? Everybody will go through choral hearings, and just like in the past, you will check what ensembles you would be interested in. And then they'll have callbacks just like we did before. And then the other one was about the time, and Jubilee is the only ensemble that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 1. Williamson Treble Voices is Tuesday, Thursday at 4:30, as is Cantori, and Williamson Voices is Monday, Wednesday, Friday at the regular time, 4:30.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. I appreciate it, and I'm glad you caught the chat. Thank you. Anybody else on the faculty have any comment they'd like to make?
I'll just say that I was on the larger committee, not the departmental committee, but the larger committee. And we had many conversations about what to do about Joe Miller's position and how to replace it. different possibilities. And it took me a long time to come to agree with what has been presented here today, to think that it was a good idea. And I think it was taken very seriously by everybody involved, and we all care very deeply about it. But I think that given the pandemic and the effects it's had and the online teaching, we didn't feel we could rush this decision. It was too important. And we're quite hopeful about hiring a really good hire in the fall of 2021, so that we have some time to really do a good job of making a good hire down the road and making a good vision for us. And I hope that everyone does understand that the pandemic has, really affected this dramatically. I'm sure you know. So I think it's a good decision that we've come to here.
Thank you, Dr. Merchandani. I'm going to take about 5 more minutes with you, and then I have to slip over to FPA. Is there something that anybody would like to ask? You can continue to discuss things after I slip over to the other one, but is there something that I could be answering? I see a question just came in on chat. Will symphonic choir be entirely remote? At this time, yes.
If I can add to that, the plan for all the ensembles is to start completely online. And if by some miracle we have a vaccine, some assurance that it's okay to get together and sing, we would only be looking at doing that sometime very late in the semester, basically learning our music online, distance from each other, and then with the opportunity to put some performances together in a short period of time. So I know some of you are probably thinking, does that mean I need to live near campus or on campus? Most likely that's going to be sometime in November that we would look at doing those performance compilations, if that's even ever possible.
Exactly. There were several questions that had to do with the ECR being, shall we say, out of date with names and things. You are absolutely correct. That should get changed hopefully tomorrow. I wanted to address you personally first before you started to see things in print. So again, you're going to get a letter from me within the next hour or so, but I felt important that we face each other and talk about this. We will now proceed to doing all of that over the next 24 hours to update the ECR and so on. There is one set of questions that I wanted to read before I slip away, and perhaps Ms. Cusack might be in the best position to help. There are questions about applied lessons, and it had to do with recitals. How will recitals happen? Can the individual student and teacher figure it out? Will we be able to stream it? How are we going to do this if we can't all be in the same room? So, Ms. Cusack, if you're willing maybe to take a stab at that while I slip away to the other room, and in about 5 or so minutes, we'll be calling you back to the main room. Thank you so much for your listening. I know we have just hit you. I'll just be blunt. We just hit you with a plan that I'm sure is very difficult to take in. Thank you for listening and for your professional work with us.
Okay, I'd be happy to talk about applied lessons. I want to say also that I'm so grateful to my colleagues in the conducting organ and sacred music department. This is, as they've said, this has been the result of hours and hours and hours of talking to other conductors, of going through every possible scenario that we could imagine. And we are here for you in whatever way we can be, to help you through this and to make the most positive year possible out of what is not an ideal situation. So about applied lessons and recitals. Recitals can certainly go forth, but they will be, of course, I'm sure you're sick of hearing this, subject to the rules of social distancing. So what that means is that you would be able possibly to do a recital with your pianist, possibly live. You may have to do recorded tracks. We might even be able to have a scenario where you could actually sing live with your pianist if there's enough distance and if the space is big enough that the fear of aerosols traveling to the pianist are not severe. And then, of course, you could live stream it, as many recitals are being done nowadays. So we are going to hold the recital requirements for this year. And you and your teacher and I will help you work out the best possible way for you to do this, for you and your families. So keep studying that repertoire, keep the memorizing going. It's going to happen.
There's another question that came up from the music ed department about observation hours and about practicum for ATM 3 and ATM 4. We are still working out how that is all going to take place. You will be able to complete your practicum this semester. Most likely it's going to be online in some format, because even if schools happen to be open, it's very doubtful that they're going to want to have a practicum student or practicum group coming in and out of the building every day. So most likely it will be online. We may be asking you if you have connections of people you want to assist. If it's online teaching, it can happen pretty much anywhere in the world, which actually opens us up to some interesting possibilities as to who you might be able to work with for the practicum. And it's ever evolving, like all the other things that have been asked today, but that's where we are.
I see another question about the opera. There have been a couple of questions about the opera. The opera will be done virtually online. That is going forward with online performances. Professor Ashbaker has been very, very proactive, as you can imagine, in setting all of this up. The composer is on board. It is still a world premiere. So have no fear, you will be hearing from her very shortly. Yeah, Amanda.
So I know that we did a little teaser for Facebook. Is it going to be like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
In some respects, yes.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to know. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a professional engineer working on it. So, yep. There was another question about where we can do recitals. And what happens to students? How do you get integrated into choirs if you've been away from campus and they go live? Every student will be accommodated. If you cannot appear live, there will be something that can be done to get you into the performances. I sincerely doubt that by November we'll be able to open up and have full choir rehearsals. But should that happen, we will work that out so that no one will be disadvantaged. Let's put it that way. In terms of recital spaces, I think Josh asked that question. There are spaces on the Lawrenceville campus. There's Gill Chapel, of course. There is a great big room in the Bart Luedeke Student Center, which is called the Cavallo Room. And I know it's Dean Onofrio's wish to put a very big piano in there. That is an enormous room with a very high ceiling. And if that becomes available, that could be an ideal space to either record or hold a recital, because social distancing in there, at least with a limited number of people, is very possible. So those are just two of the options that we have. And we'll be looking at some other things as well, including some of the Westminster campus where there will still be pianos remaining, because the conservatory is going to use part of the campus. So it's possible that we can work out having some recitals filmed, recorded on the Westminster campus. I can't promise that, but it is definitely on the table.
The last I heard that was still on the table, for instance, using Williamson Hall for recitals, assuming that the building stays open because of facilities being in the building.
Right.
But that'll be on a case-by-case basis. You'll need to apply for that. I'll add that I was in Gill Chapel on Monday looking at samples for wood and flooring and ceiling and stuff. And it's really going to be a beautiful space. So I think that's going to be a real viable place for you to do recital work.
Okay, a couple of other questions here. I don't mean to take over. I'm just looking at the ones I can answer. Will incoming freshmen get an email or get notified when they arrange with a voice teacher? Tyler, yes, that will happen. It won't happen until after the choral hearings are done, because I go to the choral hearings and just make sure I've matched everyone. I try to remember everybody who's auditioned, but I don't hear every single audition. So after the choral hearings, when I can confirm, yes, this is a good fit for this particular teacher, then it will be announced immediately after that. So hang tight. You'll all be accommodated. Can you live stream recitals from home? Yes, if you and your teacher are happy with the circumstances and the quality of the performance that you can get from home, that is definitely a possibility. Will practice rooms on the WCC campus still be available to students? Boy, that's a Dean Onofrio question, and the answer is I doubt it, because they would have to be monitored and disinfected and so forth.
Yeah, the answer is those buildings are going to be closed, the buildings with practice facilities. They will not remain online, so people will not be allowed in them.
Okay, there you go.
Just so everybody knows, we're about to switch back into the main room, and I believe the last 15 minutes will be Dean Onofrio answering more questions.
Great.
I think Kristen is going to switch us all back, but if not, you can just leave the breakout room. But
there's a question about commencement we probably should address here before we go back. My understanding is that commencement is still being discussed and negotiated. The December commencement date has been canceled because Princeton University Chapel is not available in December. So there will be ongoing discussions about how and where to have the commencement from this previous spring.
And that will involve a lot of discussion from the class of 2020. What else is in here? When we say recitals adhering to social distancing, we'll be able to have guests if masked, and distanced, and strictly recorded. Emily, I'm going to say the answer to that is yes. As long as we follow strict protocol, I think that would be a possibility. Okay, I guess we're going to close now. Return to the main session. See you there.
Are you able to see a window that says enhanced course? Dylan says thumbs up. I love it. So what I've done is a quick screenshot of each of the types of modalities. So if you can also see my cursor, right here is the course number and all that, but this symbol right here. So that's a teacher with 3 really incredibly attentive students. Above it, I put what that means. Fully in person, on campus. All sessions of that class will meet Tuesday and Thursday at 9:45. That's that symbol. As I slide up, a slightly different symbol. This course is an online course. Dr. Allen, who's with us tonight, has taught online for several years. This particular course is online under section the OL online. It is entirely asynchronous or synchronous, depending on what the instructor has set up. So in looking at this, hang on, I want to make sure you can see the rest of that, maybe asynchronous, synchronous, or a blend. So it could mean we'll meet together Tuesday night at 10 p.m., or we'll never meet together, or we'll meet at various times, or we may never meet at all. So that is online. That's a course that was designed to be online from the beginning. Now, a series of options that are in response to the pandemic. Slightly different symbol yet again. This one is fully remote, synchronous. Content delivered only virtually, but through meetings at Monday, Wednesday, 2:50 to 3:50. So that particular course will meet together, but remotely at that specified time. The next one, yet another different symbol. Again, this is the symbol. When you're in the ECR, when you hover over this descriptor right here pops up. This is a light hybrid. Students can expect up to 6, and the rest is delivered remotely through synchronous meetings. So at Tuesday, Thursday at 8 o'clock in the morning, 6 or fewer in person in the particular room, and the rest of the time synchronous Tuesday, Thursday, 8 in the morning, you are coming in remotely. The next one, heavy hybrid. Again, slightly different. Each of these symbols is a little different. Heavy hybrid, 7 or more, plus remote at a synchronous time. So this happens to be beginning Jazz Dance 2, Tuesday, Thursday from 2:50 to 4:20. You will meet 7 or more times in person, and the rest of it you will meet remotely at that time. So that's the whole big deal with synchronous, at that time. This next one, a music education course, again, slightly different symbol. This one's a little bit smooshed. Fully remote blend. Content delivered entirely virtual rather than face-to-face through a blend of asynchronous and required synchronous. Any synchronous occur at the designated time. So in this case, Dr. Kate will meet this class Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. when it meets synchronously. So it's at that time, not just let's pick a time. Light hybrid blend, 6 or fewer meetings in person, the rest a blend of asynchronous and synchronous at the class meeting times. Heavy hybrid blend, 7 or more in person, a blend of asynchronous and synchronous with synchronous at the class time. So from all of this, synchronous means together at the specified time. Asynchronous is some other time, and it may not be the entire class. In person, meeting at that time. Hybrid, some in person, some in hybrid. Any questions about that? I hope that helps a little bit. When you go to the ECR, again, if you hover over this symbol, it's going to pop up the descriptor. This was a copy and paste from that, so it's this exact same language. If you're not sure what it means, I absolutely encourage you, email the teacher and just say, it seems like, in this case, Mr. Dellinger, dear Mr. Dellinger, I see that we're fully in person. Are you still going to be doing this in person? Or, dear Dr. So-and-so, dear Ms. So-and-so, whatever it might be, can you tell me how the asynchronous is going to work? And I'm sure they will answer you.
Dr. Onofrio, we have about 7 more minutes, and it seems like there's been a couple more questions in the chat or just general questions. Does anybody want to?
I agree. Let's go into chat first and let's see what we can do here. Should we still plan to order regalia? And if yes, when? I'm going to assume that you're talking about regalia for the class of 2020 commencement. And if I'm correct in that, yes, okay, thank you. If that's correct, there will be messaging coming out very shortly through University Communications about commencement for both units, both Fine Arts and Westminster Choir College. So that will have complete information about ordering regalia, so on and so forth. All right, so let's see, quarantine. If you're a state listed on the restricted, is it a mandatory that we do? No. It is not mandatory that you quarantine on campus. However, and again, there'll be messaging coming. If you do not quarantine on campus, you're going to be required to submit a negative COVID test. There'll be information coming to you about that. If you quarantine on campus, you will not have to do that test. But yes, you can quarantine within the state of New Jersey, but off campus. Okay? Let's see here, going up further. Yep, if we move to stage 3. So I think there were a number of comments made about stage 3. If we move to stage 3, what happens? So for instance, things that involve singing or dancing, what will that mean? At this moment, it's hard for me to answer because phase 3 means reopening, but we don't yet know under what governmental restrictions. So the governor could say, go ahead and reopen. You can't have more than 10 people in a classroom. You got to have 6 feet and so on. So depending on what that means, we still have to abide by those restrictions. Singing is especially a big challenge. As you heard from Professor Cusack before, the aerosol piece of this. Those of you who are dancing, you are breathing fast. You are energetic. The air is coming out fast. When you're singing, the air is coming out fast. So we're dealing with not a 6-foot, but more like a 12-foot distancing. So that's going to play a huge role with this. So that's going to have a lot to do with what happens here with phase 3. I think the opera question got answered. Let's see here. Oh, observations for music ed. That's a question that I think I would send to Dr. Cape. Dr. Vodica, you may want to answer it now about how observations in ATN 3 and 4 work. That one's complicated because it involves the public schools, how they operate as well as us. But Dr. Vodica, you want to?
We answered that in the breakout room already.
Oh, good, good. I
Thanks.
appreciate that. Okay, yeah, we straightened out Jubilee. That's good. For people staying home, how to be integrated into in-person choirs in the future. That's going to be an interesting discussion if we are able to reopen and you choose not to return. So I'm sorry to say this, but I don't have an answer to that question right now. The conductors are aware of that possibility, so that will come as we go forward. Sliding down, let's see here. A question about, I heard a certain class was going to be remote. It's still listed as hybrid. We are changing things as soon as faculty tell us they're making a change in their decision. So this is something that I'm sure that Associate Dean Sullivan will check on with that instructor. Okay. Let's see, question about Williamson Voices. Great question. No, the two sections of Westminster Williamson Voices will operate independently. If the two conductors determine they want to work together, that will certainly be an option for those conductors. But right now, they are intended to function independently, and then we could go there. So why is a section a separate choir? Everything we do in the Westminster College of the Arts is a course. Your lesson, your choir, your class in French diction, your biology class, everything you do is a course. So in this case, when we have more than one section, so for instance, there might be two sections of Italian. There are two separate courses for all practical purposes. So Westminster Williamson Voices and Williamson Voices Treble Ensemble, two separate courses, but they're going to use the same course number with a different section number. So I think that's all the questions I'm seeing. Before we sign off, I do, first of all, want to thank all of you for your questions and contributions. And I want to remind you that we're listening very carefully. You've seen me take some notes over here, as are my faculty and staff colleagues. We're listening very carefully to what you're saying, to what's making you nervous, to what's frustrating. We get all of that. This comes up in our conversations absolutely all the time. Please think about tonight as one of the opportunities to express yourself or to ask questions. I encourage you to reach out to your faculty, your academic advisor, one of the administrators, the department chair, anybody that participated tonight. If you need help, if you're wanting to make a suggestion, if you have a question, if you want to sort of say, you know, I've had a chance to sleep on it, I want you to know X. I think that's really important. Please do that. This is not the end of this conversation. I know it won't be the end for SGA either, but it's certainly not the end for the Westminster College of the Arts. So please keep us aware. We're facing this new environment. Choose whatever words you'd like there. I invite you to submit ideas for how we can meet the challenge that we're facing in society, in the arts. Westminster College of the Arts, Rider University. You know, please feel free to tell us that. And finally, before I try to get to a last question, if I can, I got to thank everybody who participated, and especially the co-hosts, Kristen doing magic with the breakout rooms, and Dylan and Morgan for all the work behind the scenes. And as we close, please continue to remain safe and healthy. Please monitor your Rider email and the Resolved and Ready website. That's where we're going to communicate with you with updates to planning and any other pieces of other information. So let me take a look at these questions just came in. Restrictions on common areas, quarantine. Yeah. Quarantine is a whole new world for all of us. We are working right now on what we're going to have to do with these common areas that were mentioned in the chat. We're working with Gourmet Dining about how the dining complexes will work. They are looking at different physical seating. As you know, we implemented last year grab and go and other options. Those are certainly going to continue. But we're now trying to deal with this. As I think you know, the state governor's offices in all states do control some of this. So right now there's a huge issue in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania over gymnasiums, which must be closed. And some of the owners are refusing to close and all of that. So again, that's going to play a big piece of this as well. So.
Before we go, Akiko wanted to talk for a moment about accompanists.
Oh, I love it. Please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Most of you, I think everyone, I hope, got my email about the accompanist program survey. So it is very important for us to know what you'd like to, what do you think is most helpful for you. Accompanist program is really asset to your education, and we are always trying to be best served to your education. So please participate to the survey. At this point, I have to say most of the pianists are planning to do online coachings. And with that, definitely we need to provide the accompanying recordings. So we are still trying to figure out how the structure goes. But your opinion, your thoughts are very important for this process. Please send in that survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ozaki. I appreciate that very much. Unless there's other pressing business or anything, student co-hosts, anything we're missing?
Yeah, to in summary, just say, as Dr. Onofrio said at the beginning of this meeting, 3 of your 7 student government executive board members are part of this college. So we certainly have a vested interest and we really care about everything that's going on here. So if there's any questions that you haven't gotten answered, or there's anything that you really feel like you want further conversation or advocacy on, please reach out to us. We really care and we really want to help you. SGA@rider.edu, and we will be sure to follow up. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining us tonight.
What he said. Be safe.